All right, thank you everybody for coming to this second run of the track kickoff. I like the session code, Kick111A. We got lucky.
Yeah, you can't get much more first session than that, 111A. I've got the clicker. There you go.
You've got the clicker. Thank you very much for coming. My name's Reid Purvis. To your left, my right, is David Barella, and we've got Kurt Heiss down here. We are the track owners for 3 tracks: Cloud Track, the Architecture Track for Kurt, and myself for the Data Center and Infrastructure Management Track. This session is about what you should go and see, and then you should also see more. So we all want to be selfish with our tracks, but understand if you want to go and mix it up.
Mm-hmm. Cool, but one of the first things we want to point out, though, is at Ignite we had how many sessions submitted? A couple hundred, 300, 400?
Yeah, it was quite a big, in my specific track, there was close to 100 sessions that we had to whittle down into 21, and I got 1 or 2 extra added in for afterwards, but it was quite an adventure to do that.
Yeah, and so it was really difficult, the 3 of us trying to figure out which sessions we should put in here. Out of those many, many hundreds, we can only fit 20 or so per session. And so there were just as many sessions we were able to put in, there were an equal number of good sessions that we just could not fit in here. So we have to be very mindful how we put these 3 together.
So one of the interesting questions that I've had just today, earlier in the foyer, people before Scott Goo's session, was how do you get to be a track speaker? How do you come in and get involved on this? And with that in mind, there is no specific pattern for that. It's about getting involved. It's about reaching out as you go through your journey here at Ignite this year. Talk to the speakers, talk to ourselves as track owners, and then next year as we start to put the planning together, make sure that you sign up to get the invitations for those, on your Twitter feed, on your LinkedIn, what have you. If you don't see that and you haven't, heard anything sort of within the next 6 months, usually this process takes about 6 months to start. In fact, I got asked to be a track owner in August, July.
Okay.
July. So it's taken that long to kind of go through that process and then get the speakers locked in sort of sometime around September. So it's a few month process, and then they develop their content. So,
but that's next year. For this year, we've got.
That's right. I know that there was a number of the track presenters in the last session. How many track speakers, or how many speakers are in the room today? Now? There's 1 or 2 left. They all went to other sessions. Either way, let's give them a round of applause for yeah, they've worked really hard. The content is really great. So I'll hand it over to David to talk about how the tracks fit together.
Cool. So the 3 of us, we wanted to make sure there was some synergy between our 3 tracks. And so we sat down beforehand to try and figure out where we would try to focus each of those sessions. Again, we had so many sessions put in, we had to find a way to kind of group them, pick out ones which made sense in those contexts. So what we decided to do is, me in charge of the cloud track, I decided that we'll focus on one end, which is all about the cloud services. So how do you go develop for the cloud, utilize the services which are in the cloud? So we're talking about Azure Functions, machine learning, SQL Azure, app services, Service Fabric, all of those cloud services which you can go, utilize, and make your application better. So we're talking about things that you can consume and use. Now, the other end of the spectrum, we've got Reid's track, which is all around data center and infrastructure management. And for those sessions, we tried to focus more on the base building blocks of this stuff. So how do you go about building, setting up those, the base infrastructure? And for those, it's things which will work both on premises and up in the cloud. I'm going to stop looking at him now. And so that's what we're focused on there. For the base building blocks, the things that have to support all of the cool stuff that we're doing here on the cloud, how to actually build infrastructure that can support it. And again, working both on-prem and in the cloud. So got these two kind of ends of the spectrum, and so right smack bang in the middle, we put the architecture track. And for this, we tried to find sessions which were talking about architecture, which can be reused in both scenarios. So we're talking about things here for how to architect your application, how to architect for scalability, reliability, rapid deployment, things like that. And so there we're talking about things like microservices. There's big focus on microservices in that track. So I'll start by talking about the cloud track. Now again, this is all about the cloud services and how we can start consuming them to make our applications better. This was the largest track out of all of the tracks with 35 sessions. I had to do a lot of fighting with the other tracks to take slots off of them so I could fit more into mine, because I thought mine was more important. But because there are so many tracks, I can't go and call out all of them. So what I've decided to do is just for each of the 4 days here, just call out 2 sessions per day. Now, Tuesday's easy, there's only 2 sessions, so I get to feature myself. But with all of the sessions that I'm calling out here, you'll notice one common thing across all of them. All of them are in one of the arenas, or they're in Central, because we think these sessions are going to be really, really popular. So the first one is Troy Hunt. So quick show of hands, how many people here have heard of Troy Hunt? See, that's a lot of hands in the room. For everyone else, he's kind of a big deal. So I'd recommend you go along to his session. Troy Hunt is very well known in Australia for all the stuff he does around digital security. He's got a great blog, but one of the websites he has created is called Have I Been Owned? And with that, he goes and takes all the data breaches that get released, which have people's usernames, passwords, personal identifiable information, like what got released with the Ashley Madison hack or the Yahoo data breach. He goes and puts all those names into a big database so you can go and search and see if any of your usernames and passwords and private information have been leaked out onto the internet. And he built all of that on top of Azure. So here's the very real-world Azure architect of how he built it, but how he built it in such a way to bring the costs way down. So he's been able to host this really big, scalable architecture, but he does it for really low amounts of dollars, which doesn't make our sales guys happy, but it makes you guys happy because you're paying less for Azure. So his is a good session. The next one is mine. So the blockchain has been coming up a lot more recently. And I've been doing some work with some of our customers implementing some blockchain solutions. And so I'm doing a session explaining what the blockchain is, why you should start getting excited about it, and why it's going to go and disrupt a lot of industries, and what the impact is going to have on those industries. And we'll talk about some of the Azure services that you can start consuming today to get started with that blockchain development. Then the next day, I'm cheeky and I call myself out again. So on the Wednesday, my first session was a level 200, kind of what is a blockchain, but I don't get too technical. This session is a level 400. This is a level 400 deep dive, how to get your hands dirty with writing some applications on the blockchain. I'm going to be going and spinning up an Azure Ethereum private consortium network. I'm going to be using the Truffle development framework to build those smart contracts and the web user interface to go over that smart contract. I'm going to deploy it all out. So if you haven't been to a session before, you're probably going to be lost if you come to this one. But come along anyway.
Where's your Bitcoin miner?
Bitcoin miners are under the desk.
There you go.
On the Wednesday, we've got Elaine speaking on how to build a modern portal with Office 365 and on-premises data. Now, me as a dev, I've got a little bit of a love-hate relationship with SharePoint in the past. So with SharePoint, I kind of refused to do any development on it because it was a pain previously. But this has all changed, and Elaine is talking about this. It's so much easier now to go and build applications which go and interface with SharePoint and with all the other things that are inside of Office 365 via the Office Graph, which allows you to go and query your calendars, mail, things that are up in SharePoint. And so she'll be talking about how instead of building this as a isolated web part inside of SharePoint and having to fight with that infrastructure, how you can go and build a brand new modern website using all the latest web standards, and then how to go and call out to those Office APIs. So that's a good one. If you haven't had a look at Office 365 and SharePoint development in a little while, it's a good refresher to get you up to date. Then we've got Paul. So Paul is, you just tell me about Paul before?
Yes, Paul. What
Okay,
about Paul?
fine.
Sorry.
I'll go continue then. So Paul is one of the primary developers on the Azure Functions team.
Yeah.
And so he's come down all the way from USA to speak on Azure Functions. So Azure Functions is a nice way if you don't want to go and build a big chunky microservice. It's funny, I'm now calling microservices chunky. But if you want to go a little more fine-grained than that, you can go and deploy out just little single functions which only get executed on request. So instead of having to go and deploy out a whole VM, if you just have a little function that gets called very infrequently, you can just go and deploy it out. Very similar to something like AWS Lambda.
Absolutely. So this is a type of session that when I go visit customers, even as an infrastructure person, I get asked, should I be writing this as a microservice? Should I be writing this as a function? Should I be writing something where it runs in a server or something? And this is a good example of where you'll find out a bit about what you can do with functions and how you should do things with functions. So this is a session not to be missed for sure.
Yeah, you're not going to get much more deeper information than from him, since he's the guy who's writing it. On the Thursday, we've got Vishesh sitting over there. So Vishesh is going to be talking about Azure IoT Suite and how you can go and utilize that to manage your IoT devices, how to get that data, pump it through Logic Apps, create some great, beautiful dashboards using Power BI to show you what's happening on that hot data path. And he's also apparently got a giveaway. So he's got one IoT hardware kit or something to give away. So if you go along to that session, you might win it.
So stand up, Vishesh. If you want something with IoT, this is the guy to see. Wave your arms.
So he's actually from Microsoft New Zealand. So he flew all the way from New Zealand to here just to present this one session. We then have Chris Paget, who isn't here anymore. So Chris Paget talking about Azure Active Directory B2C. So a lot of us may have used Azure Active Directory already for our own enterprise. So we've got our own Azure AD with our enterprise users to authenticate with our application. This is opening it up out to consumers. So allowing consumers to go and log in with some other credentials, maybe the social logins, etc. And we're managing that for you. So if you are building any websites which are public-facing to consumers, that can help you with your authentication.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic.
Then on the Friday, we've got a hardcore one around high-performance computing. So again, he's coming down from the USA, speaking about high-performance computing in Azure for simulations and visualizations. So I put that session in there because it tickled my geek fancy. That was just hardcore, high-performance computing, doing simulations. Like that just seemed geeky and cool to me. Then for the very last session for the week, I'll put in Oren there. So Oren is going to help you just wind down the week from your head's already crammed and full of too much information. Here's just going to be a nice session to come.
Oren should rename his session, How to Make Cloud Great Again. Because 30 terrible habits. You don't want the terrible ones, I want the good ones.
So
no, it's good. Oren's a great speaker.
Oren's a great speaker. He injects a little bit of humor in there. So that's, again, before the lock note, one to just bring the week down. So we've got the architecture track. So again, the architecture track is about those repeatable patterns that you can implement in multiple places. So this one is 18 sessions, which is a standard track size. So same theme, just going to quickly call out 2 sessions per day. So on the Wednesday, we actually have Jacob from the Microsoft Azure Portal team, who's flown down from the USA down here, and he's going to be talking about how they actually go about building the Azure Portal. So the Azure Portal is a really large single page application. So they're going to so that's a really real world session there, talking about how they go about looking after this and maintaining it. So that will be an interesting one. We've then got Richard Banks. So I worked with him for a number of years at Redify, and he was always a great source of information of how you should be architecting your applications in a correct way. So CQRS is a good pattern, command query response segregation, something like that. I know what it does, I just can't remember the acronym.
Whatever it is, the acronym deserves a vowel.
It needs a vowel. And so that can help you a lot with scalability if you have something which is really, really big. On the Thursday, we've got Hyperscale Service Fabric implementations. In that session, they're going to be talking about microservices, how to take your application and make it more microservice-y. They're going to be talking about the benefits around scalability, and they're going to be talking about 10 common patterns that they see to help you with those microservices. Nick Randolph. Now, with this session, I was a little worried about this one. I saw this one pop up. I read that, and then I saw why applications with no database and no services are fast. And so I rang him up, and I told him, I'm a little worried because I think that you're going to do this session. People are going to go away with, hey, or the only takeaway message they're going to get is, I no longer need SQL Server. Then you're going to go back to the enterprise and then break everything. So he assured me that no, he's going to go and sit down and, or stand and explain why, in what scenarios this is going to be useful. So I'll let him put it in because it sounds like a really interesting session if you do it correctly and don't take the wrong message from his session. And finally, on Friday, we've got Azure API Management Deep Dive. Azure API Management is great. A lot of us have got services which we're exposing via a REST API, maybe via web API, and we're allowing our applications to consume it, but in a lot of scenarios, it would be good if we could expose it out to more people to consume. And Azure API Management can help you do that automatically by allowing you to issue access keys to throttle when people are doing bad things with it. Good. And
sorry, I was talking about the API.
More to say.
Yeah, I mentioned previously, I have a lot of customers where I go and talk to them about infrastructure, and then they come and they say, we have these applications that we want to integrate. And the API management is a great tool for doing that. We have a lot of discussions around, hey, how can I take my data and expose it so I can actually monetize that on the internet, as well as potentially leverage that between organizations. And API management's very key in that. So it's a great thing to look at, even if you're on the infrastructure side.
And then the last one, I put this one in for purely personal reasons. Like, just read that. That sounds so cool. So I read the abstract where they're going and getting all the information about the application, applying machine learning over and trying to figure out how to optimize the application. That was so cool and geeky. So I put that one in there purely for me. So you guys are welcome to come join me in that session. That one's just for me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so we round out this session talking about data center and infrastructure management. And really, what this is a track associated with those, I guess, traditional tech-ready Ignite attendees that are from the IT pro side of things, people who like to touch tin a bit, maybe get their hands dirty with some software-defined networking. So we're going to have a lot of fun in this. It's really about taking, the stuff that you have on premises, improving the management of some of those things with cloud-based services, some of the system center bits that you might be aware of, but supplementing that from the cloud, and then taking and moving some of that when you're ready, either to your own cloud or to the cloud in Azure, or potentially having your own cloud on premises. So some of the things that we talk about and what you can expect to see in this is sessions on Azure Stack. Who's heard about Azure Stack? Yeah. Every conversation I go and talk to customers, the first thing I what's happening with Azure Stack? When can we get it? And so there's going to be a few sessions on here. You go and try to slide tackle the presenters and see if you can't twist their arms with a beer. I'm sure they'll maybe disclose something to you. We'll talk a bit about Windows Server 2016, System Center 2016. Again, those things have gone through some improvements and a lot of key areas there. We have some great presenters coming down from Corp. And then talking about software-defined networking and backup. And so this session is really, these sessions are all about, or this track is all about those sessions and how that's going to come together. So how do we really work this? Went through the 25 sessions in my track, and I had to whittle this down to just a handful, which is a kind of a painful exercise. It's like trying to choose, my favorite children. So,
I'm not one of them.
25 children, that would be wow. But having said that, I did, and went through and said, which ones, would I like to go to? So I encourage you to look at all of the various sessions, but we start off with a great corp speaker, local Brisbane boy, somebody whose Brisbane boys made good in the world, Ben Armstrong. So anybody seen Ben Armstrong speak before? He comes here every year because he likes to come back and tell us how he's done. He is the worldwide program manager for all things Hyper-V and a lot of things Windows Server. And so he's going to talk a bit about Nano Server and how to manage Nano Server and that security aspect, also making sure that you can configure it and do the good stuff. That's directly after this session. And then after that, if you didn't want to go to David's session, kind of boxing here right on stage, is going to be Azure Stack. So Azure Stack, we've got Eric Burkholder and Chris Luwanga are going to be talking a bit about ISV opportunities and how to engage with that. So we are in the process over the next quarter or two, couple of quarters, of talking much more about Azure Stack. And if you don't know what Azure Stack is, it's really a micro kind of environment of Azure in your data center. They're going to talk quite a lot about that. And there's also something on Thursday you can see on in the middle. Larry Zhang is going to talk about a little bit more about how you deploy that hardware. So go and check out the Azure Stack environment. They're going to have some stuff to say, give you some input, give you some updated information. There's, and then you can go and try to bribe them with beers when they have the session showcase for further bits. Wednesday, we start off, and I looked at the sessions, and I thought that everybody likes security, right? Who does not like security? Good answer? Okay. Everybody should like security because we want to be secure. So Windows Server 2016 Security, Gino Barletta and Oren Thomas, again, the same great speaker you've highlighted, are presenting on Windows Server 2016 security. So as you go from 2012 R2 up to 2016, this is a kind of a must-know, need to be there session. After that, we have one of our great premier field engineers, premier field engineers, yep. Associated, coming all the way from Canberra, up from talking about OMS and log analytics. So if you've ever met Rafaela Brownlee, she's a bundle of energy. She's going to get on stage and kind of explode with all this knowledge on Operations Management Suite and log analytics. So she's talking detail about that, being supported by Ana Gabriela Hernandez. After that, on Wednesday, to round out the end of the day, everybody loves automation. I like automation because it means less work for me, less thinking. I think once and do 500 times. So that's really great. So George is going to talk a bit about automation and how to do that, and that's hybrid automation on-prem, automation in Azure, and how to bring it all together. It's great. Citrix. Who wants to deploy Citrix in Azure? Desktops. Yay. Are you kidding? Really? Everybody should be doing this because this is, again, a very hot topic. I go to customers now and they want to have a workload that they can save money on in Azure. This is one of them because desktops are used quite, not very often. In fact, less than 40% of the time. They're turned off 60% of the time. And so from that perspective, it's a great workload to save money. And Citrix in Azure, and Citrix XenApp Essentials, and RDS Server 2016 is a great workload to deploy in Azure. It's a scalable workload, and one that we see customers actively moving to Azure as a first-class citizen. It's a great thing to do. Then Wednesday, middle of the day, again, is more Azure Stack deployment. There are a number of Azure Stack hardware people in the showcase floor. Certainly one of our primary sponsors, HP, is one of the primary Azure Stack hardware vendors, so go and see them. And then at the end of the day on Thursday is about DR and how you can protect your environments, both obviously Hyper-V, but VMware, as well as your workloads in Azure to protect it so that you can keep that. That's processes using Azure Site Recovery. So Nirmal is an expert at this, and he's been deploying it in a number of customers, and is going to take you through his experiences with that. Friday is kind of running into the, again, more hardcore stuff. So you get up Friday morning and you say, I've been energized all week. I've got one more day to go. And you get Azure Stack and more networking. And so Bala Navchandra is the worldwide corp guy for CAT, our field engineering teams. And Larry Zhang is from the Azure Stack Engineering Product Management Group. And they're going to talk a bit about, again, Azure Stack and the hybrid deployments. So if you can imagine, you get a rack delivered from one of our ISV hardware vendors, and they drop it in the middle of your data center, and it's Azure there. How do you plug into it? How do you connect to it? How does it make sense in your environment? That's what you're going to be faced with if you want Azure Stack. And then, so that's what that session is going to talk about. We round out the week with Ben Armstrong talking about Windows containers. Who's playing around with Windows Container here? Yeah? If you haven't been playing around with Windows containers, you should literally look at that, because some of the migration capabilities and stuff that David's talked about, containers is the way you take some of these legacy applications or even new modern applications and allow them the portability with cloud. And so that containers is a great area to look at. And then we kind of round off the week with the last kind of hardcore technical session, which is about backup and recovery with Cloud First Azure Backup. I highly recommend it. We've got Stefan Budo, who is a local MVP, and Aruna Samidra, a Microsoft Corp person from Hyderabad, who's an absolute guru, and is going to talk a bit about how Azure Backup can be used for your on-premises workloads as well as Azure, and backing up that to our large storage environments in Azure. I want to point out one other key thing that one of my speakers in the track made as well, and his name is Paul Schnackenberg, INF 335. He's going to give out these great and lovely stickers. Everyone loves stickers for the back of their notebooks, right? Who doesn't?
Swag.
Yeah? If you want some of these speakers here, look at this. Mate, pass the ticket. There's another one here. My other PC is Azure. Keep calm and put it in Azure. He's going to have a bunch of stickers to give out in his session, and that's Thursday afternoon at 3:30. Other than that, wanted to give you a quick spruik on Spark After Dark. Going to be lots of great stuff there, so please submit a session, do your evaluation. We'd love to get your feedback and see the, then you can win a pilot pass.
Yep. And
that's it. Everyone, just
thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.